What is small, lays eggs, and comes home from school with small boys, and itches? What has 6 large round teeth and looks like a tartan lampshade? When matters come to a head. Rationally, I know there's no shame in it, but somehow it's still a shaming business. There was Benedict trying to learn how to spell 8 as part of his sponsored learn-in to buy musical instruments for his school, leaning on the kitchen table, scratching his head in concentration. At least I thought it was concentration. "Don't scratch like that, darling," I said. "People will think you've got nits." You've guessed it. It was nits. And there is no way to be grand about nits. If you know anything about the subject, you will know that head lice are totally indiscriminating and very choosy at the same time. They don't care about the socio-economic group of the parents of the children on whose head they lay their eggs. However, they do prefer clean hair, short hair, and boys between the ages of 4 and 6. So if you're a clean, short-haired boy of 5 in daily head-to-head contact with other clean, short-haired 5-year-olds, it's odds on you're in for an itchy head. At least I discovered them myself, and I didn't have to receive the awful blush-making louse letter from Nora the knit nurse. As I said, you can't be grand about nits. The whole family, except the bald ones, young or old, has to have the treatment. The shampoo version means 3 applications 3 times at 3-day intervals, which makes it a prolonged nuisance. Better to get it over with in 1 dose of the dreadful lotion, which you keep on your head for 6 hours or until you faint with the smell, whichever is the sooner. We'd once spent an hilarious weekend in the country. Other people's nits are funny and one's own are embarrassing. With a house full of teenage cousins when their infestation was discovered. The youngest cousin proudly read the instructions out loud. "Also suitable for pubic lice," she mispronounced. "That's all right. I never go to the pub." Imagine the dejection of the older girls, then in their spiky-haired punk phase, when their triumphant plumes and fans of hair dropped miserably under the weight of the knit lotion. When people tell you about having children, they speak only of the challenge of forming young minds and the privilege of having a stake in the future. Nothing is mentioned about being marooned indoors, blushing to your roots and stinking of malathion. Enough of that. It's probably started you itching just to think about it. One of the pleasures of motherhood that I'm not ashamed of, though, perhaps I ought to be, is dressing up my baby daughter. I didn't do it so much with Ben. Fear of the Fauntleroy factor, I suppose. But Miranda at 15 months, cutely toddling about, is just like a dolly, obligingly keen to be dressed up. Of course, a lot of the time she spends in boy-coloured, brother-worn and cousin-cast-off outsized dungarees. But just now and then, both she and I enjoy getting her frocked up in this little blue velvet number with an embroidered collar, or the Viella job with smocking and a sash. Best of all, I like her in this diminutive kilt which flares out over wrinkled tights and makes her look like a tiny wee tartan lampshade. I have to report that there's not much to report on Miranda's speaking progress. She understands everything. We even have to spell the word biscuits. But she still says very little. Ba ba as in black sheep, bye bye as in daddy going to work, and bo bo, which is what she calls her brother. He plays a lot of P-Bo with her, and I think she believes it must be his name. Miranda still has just the 6 teeth, and if you were foolish enough to ask her to smile, her face, quite pretty in repose, splits into an alarming grimace revealing all 6 large, round, unevenly placed gnashes. They look like the great pillars of Stonehenge in miniature, and like them, their configuration and alignment is a mystery to man. I dare say she will grow into them. But then that's what I say about the dungarees too. Besides that, she steals bits of Lego from her brother, just because it makes him mad. I no longer fear that she's going to swallow them. I'm only afraid of what he'll do to her if he catches up with her. People are sometimes moved to ask, "How ever do you manage?" The short answer is that I don't. The longer answer is that I am made up of lots of bits of other people's kindness, efficiency, support and spare time. There's Anne, whose red Mini screeches to a halt outside our front door each morning, just long enough to give Ben a lift to school. There's Mary, who keeps my spare keys at the off-licence for when I get locked out. Minda, who came to vacuum and stayed to iron. Annie, the part-time nanny, who has taught Miranda about buses and bun shops and long buggy rides. My own mum, whom the children adore because she lets them do all the things that she forbade us to do when we were kids. The list goes on. As my mother-in-law Gwen, my other strong and steadfast support, comes through the front door, Benedict leaps at her. "Guess what, Granny? We've got a sponsored learning at school and special knit shampoo you've got to use." "Ah, well," she replies, "I don't suppose it's as bad as the worm powder." Funny, they never tell you this bit about being a grandmother. Knit so much an embarrassment, eh, Gwen? More a way of lice.